On today's episode of Wangel's Workshop, I'll be making a knife from Alabama Damascus, and I'll be using PC RAM chips to make the knife scales. I'm going to cut the knife to shape using my angle grinder, and then I'll finish profiling the knife using my 2x72 belt sander. On this channel, I tell the story behind various knife builds. If that sounds like something that would interest you, please consider subscribing. Now I'm going to roughly mark out where I'll grind my bevels and where these scales will be. That way I can mark out where I'm going to apply the pinholes and the weight reduction holes. Once I have the holes marked out, I'll head over to the drill press and remove the material. The material for this knife is .095, and so because of that, I'll be doing the heat treatment prior to doing any bevel grinding. The fact that it's that thin and the fact that it's Damascus just make me not want to risk grinding the bevels and then doing the heat treatment. Now I'm using a chain to heat my oil prior to the quench. It's recommended that you have it between 120 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. This Damascus is made from 5160 and 15N20, and I've never heat treated it before, and I just wanted to make sure the heat treat went really well, so I'm going to do 4 normalization cycles, and then I will bring it to non-magnetic and try to hold it there for roughly 10 minutes. I'll do a quench in the oil for 10 seconds, and then clamp it between 2 metal plates for the remainder of the quench. The steel hardened quite well, and now I'm going to need to temper it. However, I do have a bit of a bow towards the end of the knife. I'm going to clamp it against angle iron for the temper, and it actually needed a little bit of an overcorrection. So after the first temper of 1 hour at 400 degrees, I went ahead and clamped it slightly past the center, and then after the second temper, it came out perfectly straight. For the knife scales, I will be gluing PC RAM chips onto some brass liners, and then I'll be casting them in epoxy. For the epoxy, I'll be using Total Boat's high performance epoxy. They were kind enough to send me some a few months ago, and it's a product I know I can trust, so I'll be using it for these scales. I think the scales came out really nice. I actually accidentally caused a bubble to happen in the second scale, but I'm going to be able to sand that out when I shape the scale, so I'm really not worried about it. And here's the knife post heat treat. I'm going to grind the flats up to 220 grit, and then I will mark out my bevel lines and grind the bevels. Since the heat treatment is already done, I have to be super careful about not overheating the knife. So I'll be using low grit belts and dunking the knife in water often. Now I'm going to hand sand the knife from 220 grit up to 1000 grit. After that, I'll clean the knife very well and I'll do a 20-minute ferric chloride etch. I will clean the knife very well and neutralize the acid after that, and then do a coffee etch. And now here's the final result of the Damascus after the ferric chloride and coffee etch. Now I'll drill the pinholes into the scales, and then I will use my 2x72 belt sander to profile them to the knife. Once the scales are profiled, I will mix up some West Systems G-Flex epoxy and glue them to the knife. Now I'll head over to the router to use a 1/4 inch roundover bit to start shaping the scales. Then to finish up rounding over, I'm pretty much just going to do this back and forth motion until both sides are evenly rounded. After I'm done on the belt sander, I will hand sand the knife from 220 grit up to 600 grit, and then I'll wet sand up to 1000 grit. After that, I'm going to take it over to my buffing wheel. Here are the scales after polishing them up. And now the last thing to do is sharpen the knife. If you guys have any good ideas of things that I could cast in epoxy and reasonably make knife scales, please comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. And if you want to be notified when I upload new videos, hit the notification bell. It really helps me tremendously, and I'm so thankful for everybody that helps the channel grow. As always, thanks for watching.